The cabin of the sleek international airliner buzzed with energy as passengers settled in for their long-haul journey from Los Angeles to Manila. In the first-class section, luxury was on full display. Plush leather seats that reclined into beds, gourmet dining, and personalized service catering to an elite clientele of executives, affluent tourists, and seasoned globetrotters. Moving gracefully through the aisle was Maria Santos, a petite Filipina flight attendant whose uniform was impeccably tailored, her dark hair neatly secured, and her warm smile effortlessly genuine. Unlike some of her colleagues, Maria opted for minimal makeup and no flashy accessories, exuding a quiet professionalism that spoke more through her actions than appearances. As she approached row 2, her smile briefly wavered. Seated there was Mr. Jonathan Williams, a well-known executive in the tech industry. His expensive suit, paired with a diamond-studded watch, radiated wealth and entitlement. Next to him, his wife sat draped in an extravagant scarf, one that likely cost more than Maria's entire monthly salary. Across the aisle lounged their teenage son, already grumbling about the in-flight Wi-Fi. Maria greeted them warmly. "Good afternoon, sir, ma'am. Welcome aboard. May I assist you with your luggage or anything else before takeoff?" Without looking up from his phone, Mr. Williams responded curtly. "Yes, you can start by bringing me a proper drink. Champagne, the best you have, and don't take all day." Maria nodded professionally. "Of course, sir. I'll have that for you right away." As she turned, Mrs. Williams leaned toward her husband and muttered just loud enough for Maria to hear, "Does she even speak proper English? It's always the same on these flights. Can't they hire someone more polished?" Maria heard the comment but showed no reaction. Years of experience had trained her to remain composed, no matter how condescending a passenger might be. She soon returned, setting down a perfectly chilled glass of champagne with practiced ease. "Here you are, sir. If there's anything else you need, please let me know." Instead of thanking her, Mr. Williams held up the glass, examining it as though he'd been handed an inferior product. "This is the best you have? I expected something more refined in first class," he scoffed. Maria remained calm. "Yes, sir. This is one of our premium selections. However, if you'd prefer, I can bring you the wine list so you can choose." Before Mr. Williams could reply, his son interjected, "Dad, look at this plane. It's like they cut corners everywhere, even the staff." "No offense," he added with a smirk, though his tone suggested he meant every word. Maria's heart ached, but she refused to let their remarks shake her professionalism. "I'll be back shortly to take your dinner orders," she said smoothly before retreating to the galley. Even as she assisted other passengers, she could feel their judgment lingering. Snippets of their conversation drifted toward her, comments about her accent, her height, even her shoes. "She doesn't look like she belongs here," Mrs. Williams murmured with disdain. "I mean, look at her shoes. Probably from a bargain bin somewhere." Her husband chuckled. "Well, what do you expect? Not everyone can meet our standards." Nearby passengers exchanged uneasy glances but remained silent. Maria, however, remained steadfast in her duties, ensuring that every passenger, including the Williams family, received impeccable service. No amount of whispered insults could diminish her commitment to her job. Once the flight was in the air, the Williams family found a new pastime, criticizing every aspect of the journey. The seats weren't plush enough, the menu lacked variety, and the service, particularly from Maria, was, in their words, mediocre at best. As Maria made her way through the aisle with a tray of appetizers, Mrs. Williams snapped her fingers sharply to get her attention. "Excuse me," she said coolly. "What exactly is this supposed to be?" Maria remained composed. "It's a selection of hors d'oeuvres, ma'am. We have smoked salmon, caviar, and a vegetarian option. Would you like me to go over them in detail?" Mrs. Williams wrinkled her nose in distaste. "I think I'll pass. Honestly, this looks like something they'd serve in economy class. Don't you have anything better?" Before Maria could respond, her colleague Anna, a younger flight attendant, overheard and stepped in. "I can check with the kitchen for alternative options, ma'am," she offered. Mrs. Williams waved her off dismissively. "Don't bother. Just bring me a glass of red wine. not too dry. As Anna walked away, Mr. Williams leaned back in his seat and muttered, "This is what happens when you hire people who don't know what they're doing. Probably got the job because she's cheap labor." A flicker of anger stirred in Maria's chest, but she quickly suppressed it. These passengers had no idea who she really was. They didn't know that she had dedicated nearly 2 decades to this career, working tirelessly to support her family and steadily rising through the airline's ranks. And they certainly had no clue that she was, in fact, the CEO of the very airline they were flying on, traveling undercover as part of an initiative to personally assess the passenger experience. As the flight wore on, Maria endured the Williams family's relentless complaints and snide remarks. At one point, Mr. Williams even called over the purser to formally complain about her, claiming she was unfit to serve in first class. The purser, well aware of Maria's true identity, managed to keep a neutral expression as he reassured Mr. Williams that his concerns would be taken into account. Meanwhile, other passengers began to take notice of Maria's composure under pressure. An older gentleman seated in row 3 caught her attention as she passed by. "You're handling yourself well," he said quietly. "Don't let them get to you." Maria gave him a small, appreciative smile. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot." As the flight continued, Maria reflected on the irony of it all. She had personally overseen every detail of this airline, from the carefully curated menu to the high standards of service, and yet here she was, criticized by people who had no idea of her role in crafting the very experience they were enjoying. What the Williams family didn't realize, however, was that their behavior was about to catch up with them. By the time the aircraft had reached cruising altitude, the gentle hum of the engines filled the cabin as passengers settled into their seats, sipping drinks or scrolling through their tablets. But despite the luxurious surroundings, the Williams family remained far from satisfied. Maria, ever professional, continued making her rounds, delivering drinks, adjusting seat settings, and ensuring that every passenger was comfortable. No matter how many barbed remarks or dismissive glances she received, she carried herself with unwavering grace and professionalism. Little did the Williams family know that the woman they had spent the flight belittling was the one who truly held the power in this cabin, and soon enough they would find out. As the flight continued, Maria remained composed despite the growing tension. Some passengers occasionally glanced her way, silently offering their support, but she never faltered. Her professionalism served as a shield, deflecting the negativity directed at her. "Excuse me, miss," Mrs. Williams called out, waving her hand impatiently. Maria approached with her usual calm demeanor. "Yes, ma'am. How may I assist you?" Mrs. Williams held up the menu with a look of distaste, as though it was beneath her. "This menu is uninspired. Don't you have anything better? A proper filet mignon, perhaps? Or a lobster tail? I thought first-class passengers were supposed to get the best." Maria's polite smile never wavered. "Our menu has been carefully curated to offer a variety of options. While we don't have lobster, our chef highly recommends the seared salmon or the lamb chops, both of which are popular choices." Mrs. Williams scoffed. "I suppose that will have to do, but make sure it's cooked properly. I won't accept anything less than perfection." "Of course, ma'am. I'll make sure the chef knows your preferences," Maria replied, jotting down the order. As she turned to leave, she caught the smirk on Mr. Williams's face. Leaning toward his wife, he muttered just loudly enough for Maria to hear, "It's always the same with these types. They act polite, but you know they're not really listening." Maria didn't react. She simply walked away, head held high. In the galley, her colleague Anna finally let her frustration show. "Maria, how are you staying so calm? Those people are unbearable." Maria offered a reassuring smile. "It's just part of the job, Anna. Not everyone appreciates what we do." Anna shook her head in disbelief. "Still, the way they talk to you, it's disgusting. I don't know how you put up with it." Maria's eyes twinkled slightly with a secret she wasn't ready to reveal. "Patience, Anna. People always reveal their true selves over time." Anna sighed and returned to assisting other passengers, while Maria checked her watch. This flight was more than just another work day. It was part of a personal mission to reconnect with the foundation of the airline she had built. Meanwhile, the Williams family continued to voice their dissatisfaction. Why is the Wi-Fi so slow? Mr. Williams barked as Maria walked past. I'll check with our technical team, sir, she replied, making a mental note to follow up. As she stepped away, Mr. Williams turned to his wife. This airline is a joke. I'm filing a complaint the moment we land. Someone needs to know how poorly this place is run. Their son, still scrolling on his phone, chuckled. Yeah, Dad. Maybe you should buy the airline. Then we could actually fly in style. Other first-class passengers exchanged glances, visibly uncomfortable with the Williams family's behavior. Some whispered their admiration for Maria's composure, while others shook their heads at the blatant entitlement on display. An older gentleman in row 3 leaned slightly toward Mr. Williams. You know, he said quietly, perhaps you should give that young lady a little more credit. She's doing an excellent job, Mr. Williams scoffed. Spare me the lecture. We paid for first class, and we expect first-class service. If she can't handle it, she shouldn't be here. The elderly man simply shook his head and returned to his book, unwilling to waste any more words on a lost cause. As the flight continued, something about Maria's demeanor set her apart. She remained professional, but those paying attention noticed subtle signs: her confident posture, the way the captain treated her with unusual respect, the purser consulting her on decisions beyond a typical flight attendant's responsibilities. During a quiet moment in the galley, the purser approached her. Maria, are you sure you want to keep this up? We can step in if needed. Maria shook her head. No, let's see this through. I want to experience everything firsthand. The purser nodded, respecting her decision. Midway through the flight, the captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're enjoying your flight. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge a very special guest on board. Today, someone who has played a significant role in shaping this airline. More details will be shared as we near our destination, but for now, please join me in appreciating our incredible crew for their dedication and hard work. A murmur spread through the cabin. Passengers speculated about the identity of the guest. Probably some celebrity, one whispered. Maybe a top executive, another guessed. The Williams family, however, remained uninterested. Mr. Williams leaned back with a scoff. Who cares? It doesn't change the fact that this airline is a disaster. Maria continued her work, unfazed. When she stopped by row 2 to check on the Williams family, she maintained her polite tone. Is everything to your satisfaction, sir? Mr. Williams rolled his eyes. Barely. But I suppose you did the best you could, given your limitations. Maria's smile never wavered. Thank you for your feedback, sir. If there's anything else I can do to improve your experience, please let me know. As she walked away, Mr. Williams muttered, Unbelievable. But Maria wasn't focused on his words. She was focused on what was coming next. The moment when the truth would be revealed, and the Williams family would finally realize who they had been speaking to all along. By the time dinner service ended, the atmosphere in the cabin had noticeably shifted. Passengers had begun to pay more attention to Maria, engaging her in conversation and recognizing the dedication she put into her work. Some even asked about her experiences as a flight attendant, though she kept her responses brief, careful not to draw too much attention to herself just yet. As the flight neared its final hours, anticipation over the captain's announcement grew. Excuse me, miss, the elderly gentleman from row 3 called out as Maria passed by. Yes, sir, she responded warmly. He hesitated before asking, Do you happen to know who this special guest might be? Maria's polite smile remained. I'm afraid you'll have to wait just a little longer, sir, but I promise, it will all make sense soon enough. The man nodded, his curiosity only deepening. Meanwhile, Mrs. Williams, who had overheard the exchange, rolled her eyes. Honestly, what's the big deal? Probably some overpaid executive getting a free ride. Her husband chuckled. Or some celebrity looking for attention. Either way, not worth the fuss. Their son added, Whoever it is, I just hope they fix this awful Wi-Fi. Passengers nearby exchanged uneasy glances, increasingly fed up with the family's attitude. Yet Maria continued her work, maintaining her graceful composure. Then, With 2 hours left in the flight, the captain's voice came over the intercom once more. Ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned earlier, we have a very special guest on board today. This individual has played an instrumental role in shaping our airline into what it is today. The moment of truth had arrived. As the announcement echoed through the cabin, a hushed anticipation settled over the passengers. Heads turned, eyes scanning for clues. Who would step forward? To their astonishment, Maria set down her tray and confidently made her way to the front of the aircraft. The steady hum of the engines underscored the moment's significance, as whispers of speculation spread through the cabin. Wait, is it her? Why would a flight attendant be the special guest? This doesn't make sense. The Williams family exchanged bewildered glances. Mrs. Williams scoffed, crossing her arms. What is she doing? This is ridiculous. Maria took a deep breath, her composed gaze sweeping over the cabin. Good evening, everyone. My name is Maria Santos, and I want to personally thank you for choosing to fly with us today. For those who may not know, I am the CEO of this airline. A collective gasp rippled through the passengers as they stared at her in shock. Maria continued, her voice steady and warm. I began my career as a flight attendant years ago. It was my first job after college, and it taught me invaluable lessons about teamwork, dedication, and treating people with kindness, principles that remain at the heart of everything I do. Applause erupted throughout the cabin, admiration growing with each word she spoke. Maria lifted a hand, signaling for quiet. As CEO, I believe it's essential to understand the experiences of both our crew and our passengers. That's why I occasionally step into the role of a flight attendant, to stay connected to the people who make our airline what it is, and to ensure that we uphold the standards we set for ourselves. Her words resonated with most of the cabin, yet the Williams family remained frozen in their seats, their expressions shifting from disbelief to discomfort. As the applause died down, Maria turned her attention to them. Now, I'd like to address something that took place during this flight. Her tone was firm but composed. Mrs. Williams shifted uncomfortably. What is this about? She whispered to her husband. Maria took a measured step toward their row. Throughout this flight, I've observed behavior that does not reflect the values we hold dear at this airline, values of respect, kindness, and understanding. Some passengers have treated our crew with disregard and a lack of appreciation. The atmosphere in the cabin grew tense. Every eye was now fixed on the Williams family, who were visibly squirming in their seats. I want to remind everyone, Maria continued, that every member of our crew works tirelessly to ensure your safety and comfort. Regardless of their role, they deserve to be treated with dignity. Mr. Williams attempted to interject. Look, if this is about us, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Maria held up a hand, silencing him. There's no misunderstanding, sir. I am referring to the comments and complaints directed at me and my colleagues throughout this flight. Mrs. Williams's face turned red. Well, we didn't realize... Maria cut her off, gently but firmly. It shouldn't matter who I am. Respect is a courtesy that should be extended to everyone. Murmurs of agreement spread among the passengers. One man in row 5 spoke up. She's right. You've been rude this entire flight. You owe them an apology. Another passenger nodded. It's about time someone said something. All eyes remained on the Williams family, their previous arrogance dissolving into shame. Yet Maria wasn't looking to humiliate them. She was offering them a chance to make amends. I believe in second chances, she said gently. If there's anything you'd like to say, now is the time. Mrs. Williams, barely audible, muttered, We're sorry. We didn't mean to offend anyone. Her husband gave a reluctant nod. Yes, we apologize. It won't happen again. Maria offered a warm smile. Thank you. Apologies are the first step toward understanding. The cabin erupted in applause once more, admiration filling the air. Even the Williams family, hesitant but aware, joined in. The remainder of the flight carried a noticeably lighter atmosphere, with passengers engaging in friendly conversations, and the crew working with renewed enthusiasm. Maria, ever humble, returned to her duties, assisting with final preparations for landing. But to those on board, she had become more than a CEO. She was a living embodiment of integrity, humility, and leadership by example. As the plane began its descent, the Williams family sat in uncharacteristic silence. Their earlier bravado had crumbled, leaving them deep in thought. The elderly gentleman in row 3 leaned toward a younger man beside him. "Now that's class," he said. "She didn't have to do that, but the way she handled herself, impressive." The younger man nodded. "She could have embarrassed them more, but she didn't. That's real leadership." As murmurs of admiration filled the cabin, Mrs. Williams turned to her husband. "Do you think we went too far?" Mr. Williams exhaled heavily. "It's not about that, Karen. It's about how blind we were. We complained, we judged, and for what? But we didn't know who she was," she argued. "That's exactly the problem," he replied firmly. "It shouldn't have mattered. Whether she was a flight attendant or a CEO, we should have treated her with respect." Their son, who had been quietly scrolling on his tablet, finally spoke. "Yeah, it was kind of messed up. She wasn't even mad, just disappointed." Karen looked down at her hands, her usual confidence replaced by vulnerability. "We need to do better." As the plane landed and passengers prepared to disembark, Maria resumed her role, assisting wherever needed. Her colleagues couldn't hide their admiration. "Maria, that was incredible," one flight attendant said. "You handled that perfectly." Maria shrugged modestly. "It wasn't about me. It was about setting an example. For them, for us, for everyone watching." The captain approached her with a broad smile. "You've set the bar high, Maria. No one will forget this flight." Maria gave a tired but warm smile. "Let's just hope it inspires real change." Later that evening, Maria reflected on the day's events. She drafted a post for the airline's social media, not for praise, but to share a message of respect, humility, and the importance of valuing everyone's contributions. "To our passengers, crew, and all those in the airline industry," she wrote, "let's strive to treat each other with the kindness and respect we all deserve. It's the small moments that define us, and together we can create a world where empathy and understanding take flight." Her post quickly went viral, sparking conversations worldwide. People shared their own stories of kindness and leadership, inspired by Maria's actions. Her journey from flight attendant to CEO was not just a testament to perseverance, but a powerful reminder of the values that truly matter. And for those who witnessed her grace that day, whether in person or online, Maria Santos would forever be remembered as the leader who proved respect and humility always take precedence over status. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring tales of leadership, resilience, and humanity. Let's keep spreading positivity together.